Okay, so you know a monitor's good when it ships in a crate.
Every single year, we see gaming monitors improve. Sometimes those upgrades are small, sometimes they are massive. Well, this year for me, it's seeing OLED displays hit the market at 240 Hz, which has been the best upgrade I've seen in quite a long time. Today though, I am checking out a monitor that you might not have heard of before coming from KTC. This is the new G27P6 from KTC, and this has the same beautiful OLED panel that you'd find in both the LG and Asus equivalents. But it also has a bunch of additional features like a custom heatsink, built-in speakers, a KVM, as well as VRR and True HDR, all while coming in at a lower price point. Off the bat though, for me specifically, I do want to explain why this specific monitor is a little bit more special to me, and that's because this whole office and everything you see behind me is going to be a baby's room in about a couple months. And with that, the entire space will be moved to my basement, and my typical dual display setup will likely just come down to one monitor, and chances are it's going to be this KTC monitor since it actually does just about everything I need, which I will get into. But coming in at about 800 USD, there's a lot to unpack. Getting into this though, we do have that quick start guide with some factory calibration certificates. Always good to see on a new monitor. There's also the two-piece metal stand, which for once I'll be using over a monitor arm. You'll definitely see why. There's the external power brick, as well as the accessory box, which does include the power lead, a DisplayPort cable, HDMI cable, Type-C, as well as some screws which are used to extend and level the VESA holes. For ports though, you do have a lot here, which is actually what allows me to get so many devices into one setup. You have that DisplayPort, which will connect to my custom gaming PC. You also have the two HDMI ports, which are HDMI 2.0. These will connect to my PS5 and Xbox Series X. I would have loved to see HDMI 2.1 on those ports, but both my consoles will still see 1440p at 120 Hz either way. You've also got a 65 watt Type-C port with reverse charging, and this I'll be using for my work laptop or MacBook, which I will touch on more in a bit. The Type-C port has access to the two USB-As on a KVM switch, which does allow me to swap USB accessories between both my PC and Type-C device. And lastly, you've got the headphone jack, which I will be using to hook up to these Kanto U4 speakers. And a quick note on these speakers, I really do wish I got them sooner. They absolutely sound incredible for the price. Plus, it's also hooked up to this Audio-Technica turntable. I'm not sure if I'm just old, but I really dig the physical aspect of choosing a dope record to listen to. Now, as far as look and feel for this monitor, it's definitely a premium built design. And for the first time in I think over a year, I won't be putting a display on a monitor arm. Even talking to myself during the setup, I was a little bit too excited.
Oh my god, it's f***ing perfect.
The two-piece metal stand is actually good, like actually good. It is easy to put together with no tools, and for me, it's actually not massive, and I guess that's all I really needed. For my setup though, it sits on my desk shelf comfortably, and that alone is good enough. And if you do need to know what the stand measurements are, it's about 17 inches from prong to prong, and about 8 inches in depth. There is this tiny clip on the back end as well for the many cables you definitely have connected. Sure, this won't be as clean as a monitor arm, but it definitely does the job. Still, this monitor does have full tilt, pivot, and height adjustments if needed, and you can rotate it a full 90 degrees. If you do want to throw this up on a monitor arm though, it's still super easy to do. I did actually do this to test it out. I used the 4 screws to extend and level the VESA holes and mounted it on this monitor arm from Pixio. And fun fact, KTC actually makes the displays for Pixio, and there's a high chance you've gamed on a KTC panel before. So for them to bring their own lineup to the UK and North America is definitely a huge win for us gamers. Competition is always better. Outside of all of that though, the aesthetic is clean overall, looking minimal from the front end, how I like it, and gamer on the back end. Not that it's super bright or anything, but there's also this RGB KTC logo on the back end, which can be customized. Now, when it does come down to us gamers, casual, hardcore, or somewhere in between, we still need great specs on all of our displays. And this one really is fully loaded. Again, this does have a OLED panel, giving us increased brightness compared to a typical OLED display. This is also a 27-inch 1440p monitor at 240 Hz refresh rate, which is absolutely perfect for competitive gaming. Pair that with the 0.03 millisecond response time, low latency in VRR through the DisplayPort, and up to 1000 nits peak brightness on the HDR cinema mode, you've got yourself an excellent gaming experience. Now, coming down to PC gaming, this is definitely where I get the most value out of this monitor, and I think this is only the second time I've ever had to turn down the brightness on an OLED display, the first time being with the Sony A95L, so I'm super stoked to have this much brightness overhead if I need it. What makes this possible though is the built-in heatsink in the rear housing to help manage the heat dissipation. For gaming though, on here, I am still grinding my way back into Grandmasters in Overwatch and hopefully top 500 again. And that shouldn't be too hard since there's only like 700 people playing anyways. Still, on here, it's one of the best experiences you can have for PC gaming. And I I have mentioned my love for 1440p in the past, I think it's just the perfect balance between fidelity and performance. My rig does have an RTX 2070 that can pull high frames on a lot of different games like first-person shooters and other games like my all-time favorite Red Dead Redemption 2. On slower-paced games like this, you can really enjoy a beautiful graphical experience, especially scenes like this where the HDR gets to flex its rippling muscles. And I've recently jumped into Alan Wake 2 for the first time, which is definitely a marvel of beauty when it comes to gaming. And I've never actually played Alan Wake 1, but let me know down below if it's even worth going back to play. The gaming experience doesn't end there though, because I have spent a huge amount of time playing on console as well. For myself, working all day, making content all evening, all while being a dad makes it so sometimes I don't want to be a sweatlord with mouse and keyboard. For a more relaxed experience, I always turn to my gaming consoles. For the last while, the PlayStation 5 has been my main console of choice, mainly due to the original titles, and as well for some reason I still prefer Call of Duty on console. Mentioning the HDMI ports again though, they are HDMI 2.0, so you will not be getting VRR or auto low latency mode on these, but you will still be able to game at a full 120Hz at 1440p. In terms of my library, I'm still working my way through loads of games like Spider-Man 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and hoping to jump into the new Call of Duty multiplayer today. And if you are over the age of 24, just accept you're a senior citizen when it comes to gaming, and you're still going to get clapped by children with inferior hardware. It's simply a fact. Still, it's always fun throwing down regardless. For Call of Duty, I always play with any built-in crosshairs when available. The weapons simply have so much recoil. Plus, the HDR experience here is no less special than on PC, and this really helps showcase the power these consoles have nowadays. It's not all fun and games, since I did mention before this monitor will likely be my everyday driver for everything else as well. For my day job, I actually work as an accountant, and in the evenings I do plenty of content creation, which includes a whole lot of editing. For this to work though, I've got my Windows laptop for professional work, my LG Gram for personal Windows stuff, and my MacBook Pro for everything creative. The beauty here is though, I simply love my one cable setups. And each of these laptops will hook up with just a single Type-C cable for display, charging, and all the accessories through the KVM hub. For this, both my headset and mouse automatically swap each time I change my inputs, or you can swap them manually if you need to. My keyboard is already wireless, so I simply change this on its own. Still, at 27 inches, this monitor gives me a PPI of about 110, so text is brilliantly sharp, and the screen is large enough for any work I need to do. And for my laptops, I typically keep them stowed in my Grove-made desk shelf, but if I do need extra screen real estate, I always pull them out like this. I've also spent a good amount of time watching content on here since I am a sucker for a nice OLED display. Now, I haven't really gone into any animes outside of Dragon Ball, but I just started Demon Hunter, which so far it's pretty good. If you do have other recommendations, please let me know down below. I'm actually serious, I would love to hear your recommendations. And while I've got these awesome Kanto speakers, the monitor does have a set of 5-watt speakers built right in, which actually sound pretty badass considering monitors only really include 2 or 3-watt speakers typically. Still, to test these out, again, they're not really that bad. They are side firing as well, so they don't really muffle into your wall. These speakers are actually usable compared to some other monitors I've tested, so I'm really happy KTC didn't just check a box with some smaller ones. But here is a quick sound test. And coming down to all the other features and menu options on this monitor, that could probably be a video on its own almost. But the thing here I want to highlight is definitely the OLED care options, especially since you might be worried about burn-in. From the get-go, this monitor does have an option to set a screensaver, which can be activated in 5-minute intervals. It looks like it's simply letting you know the display is idle, and to click the rear knob to reactivate the display. This knob on the back end is also what controls the rest of the menu. Beyond that, there's a sort of pixel scrubbing feature you can process manually or have it activate whenever the monitor is shut off. As well, there is a pixel shifting feature. The display as a whole also has a matte anti-glare coating, which isn't as aggressive as I've seen in the past, though considering I've got all these lamps, lights, and a big window, a glossy display would absolutely get annihilated with reflections. I will say, as somebody who doesn't calibrate their displays and really just uses them out of box, it's pretty sweet to get a factory report here for calibration. And I'm sure lots of you smarter than I am actually understand what this all says. Still, per the spec sheet, this monitor does have a 1.5 million-to-1 contrast ratio and 100% coverage of the sRGB color gamut. Still, to me, everything here looks incredible, so I really don't have any complaints. Now, for a monitor coming in more affordably than the big brands, there's got to be a catch, right? Well, I haven't really found it yet apart from the lack of HDMI 2.1. But outside of that, this monitor truly ticks so many boxes and I sort of have to look for something to complain about. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I will be replying to just about all comments within the first couple hours, so lay it on me. Anyways, that's been it. Thanks for watching. Until next time.